Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Schola Gladiatoria. Now I'm going to talk very briefly, in terms of a review anyway, about the Magnificent Chu Jian from Chen. Now I have reviewed this sword before, so if you haven't looked at that review and you want to find out more about this sword, then go and look at that review. You can just find it. As with any of my videos, just search in my videos search for Chen, for example, you'll find all the reviews, or you can go to my review playlist. And now what I wanted to say about this is I have quite a large number of Chen swords now, so thanks to Chen for sending these to me, and you know, some of them I really love. Some of them are not necessarily my cup of tea, but they're all good swords, and I've done some quite brutal testing with some of them. But what's interesting is, even though I have a wide variety of Chinese swords now from Chen, and a couple of the recent ones that have come, which I haven't done reviews for yet, and those will be forthcoming, I'm really fond of. I like them a lot, and I'll be talking about those in due course. But what was interesting was I was having a bit of a tidy up recently and reorganizing where I've stored some things, and I got the Magnificent Chu out again, and I was reminded, I think this was probably the first sword from Chen that I really remember reviewing and testing and trying out, and I really fell in love with it, and I still do love it. It's just a gorgeous blade. And really this video is to say two things. One, that despite the fact that I've now reviewed a lot of Chen swords and have quite a lot of them, and I've learned a hell of a lot about Chinese swords and Chinese history that I didn't even know any of before. So it's been a great learning curve and learning opportunity for me. But since all that time has passed, I always come back to this Magnificent Chu, and I'm reminded of what an absolutely lovely sword it is, how well it tracks. I think it's the broadness of the blade, and yet it's light, but it's not super light. It's got a fair amount of authority in the blade, and it just moves around really nicely. And the proportions of it are quite similar, in fact, as I mentioned in my review, to things like a Roman spatha. They're quite similar to certain types of basket-hilted broadsword, even narrower types of arming sword and side sword and things like this. So it's quite similar to European swords that I'm familiar with. It can function in a similar way. But the other thing I wanted to say about it is, now that I've lived with it for a bit longer, I want to accentuate one particular point of my review based on a little bit more user experience with it, and that is the grip. Now, one of the things that I felt not quite right about the grip is I found it quite slippy originally. Now, the grip is it has shagreen or shark skin, essentially ray skin, underneath the cord. You can just see it poking out there, and then it has cord bound over the top. Now, this is authentic, but I'm not particularly personally a huge fan of the cord that's been chosen here, and the reasons for that are mostly break down into 2 points. Number one, I find it's a little bit slippery. I want something with a bit more traction to it. But secondly, it's the fact that it's got a little bit of compression to it. Now, this is not something I've necessarily noticed or analysed in this way initially, but I think that it's important, if a binding is on a sword grip, and this, you can apply this to katanas, you can apply it to arming swords, all sorts of Asian and European and other swords as well. Anything that has a binding over the grip, it needs to, in my opinion, be relatively uncompressible. I can't think of what a word. Not firm. I guess firm is possibly a way of describing it, but not squishy, if that makes sense. And this cord on here is just, to my sensibilities and my grip, is just a little bit too squishy, and I think that's what feels weird about the sword, because when you change direction, when you apply energy or force to the grip, there's a little bit of compression that happens in the grip before it responds. A bit like, to exaggerate it, a bit like holding a foam noodle instead of holding a wooden stick. And I would prefer it if this was more like holding a wooden stick. So my recommendation would be for this covering to be made of either thinner cord or kind of denser, harder cord, or indeed to maybe go with a shagreen grip or even leather cord or something like this, or just simply something more like twine, so much thinner. But essentially I think it would be a better grip, and I might do this myself, or I might ask someone who's more of an expert in that sort of field to do it for me to rebind this grip in a material that is a little bit thinner. It's a little bit wide for my grip, for my personal taste, so I do like thin grips. In something that's a little bit thinner, a little bit less squishy, a little bit harder. And for me personally, I think that would lead this to being a nicer handling sword. But apart from this grip wrap, I love everything else about this sword. The blade is absolutely beautiful. It's chopped lots of things now. I have sharpened it up a little bit more. It took sharpening well, it keeps an edge well. The pattern welding in it is beautiful. It has not corroded or discoloured or anything like that, which can happen with pattern welded blades that I've had. The bronze fittings, again, I think I mentioned this before, I might try artificially aging those with an acid agent. But I like them. They're a beautiful coppery bronze colour. So really for me, the only thing which could be improved about this sword is indeed this grip wrapping. And I think that one of the other reviewers had some issues, some durability issues with this grip wrapping as well, which admittedly I haven't had, but I do think that the grip wrapping could be improved with a different type of cord or perhaps a different material. And maybe there should be a deluxe version with some, you know, some much nicer, maybe shark skin full wrap or something on it. But anyway, just to really sing the praises of the Magnificent Chu Jian from LK Chen, link below. This really is a really lovely sword, and as I said before, you could fit this blade on all sorts of other hilts and it would make a beautiful, beautiful sword. It's just a very nice generic kind of Jian slash side sword slash arming sword slash Sparta blade. Very, very nice sword. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon on the channel. Cheers folks!